Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Chronically Questioning podcast. Today I'm here with Melanie, and she's another former member of Third Day Worship Center. I'm just going to, before we start our conversation, to remind everyone to be respectful in the comments, online, and don't go bashing this church. Do not go and threaten and harass members or the leadership. We're trying to start a change, not hurt people's feelings. So with that, hi, Mel.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
So, how did you end up at Third Day Worship Center?
So I would have been around 19 years old when I started, and I was introduced by a old family member. We'll call this person. She had brought me there. She had been going there, and I loved it because it was so lively. Like I've been to other churches in the past, and this one was just so different from what I've ever experienced in my life as a 19-year-old, right? So I had been a big partier and drinker, and I had a baby at the age of 17. So I was just looking for something more, and she brought me there. I was open to it, and that's kind of where it all started.
Did you like it at first?
I definitely liked it at first.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's what kept me going there.
Yeah. What sort of things did you like about it besides the music and the environment?
I have to be honest. I really did like how passionate Francis was in his preaching, and like obviously there's things as a 19, like my 19-year-old mind would be like, oh, like would question, but I was young and he was experienced, and he just the way the preaching happened, it almost like made you excited. Like I don't even know how to explain it. Like even if I hear it now, I know that feeling that it does to people, and it's like going to like a rally, like where you pump each other up, and so that's kind of what I really liked about it too, because I'm a very passionate person myself. So and there was a lot of freedom there, like with the kids. Like my daughter would have been 2 at the time, and she got to run around, and it was just cute to watch her in that kind of atmosphere. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And so did you start making friends easily?
I make friends easily in general, so yes, I did. I don't like, there's nothing that particularly stands out right away back in those, like when I first started. I would talk to people, but usually I would just kind of leave like the first couple months and go back, leaving. And then I started connecting more with Francis's daughter.
Oh yeah.
She was younger, so I started becoming friends with her. And it wasn't too long after I started going that I started bringing in some of my own family members.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You started attending?
Yeah, I did. Like at the first time I went, that was it. Like Edith had come up to me and prayed over me that very first service.
Really? What'd she say? Do you remember?
Yeah, I do. I remember she was like, oh, the Spirit of God is all over you. I can feel it. And she was praying in tongues, and it was creepy to me. Like I was actually really scared and turned off by that. But I just kind of, I'm not a rude person. So I was like, I'll just stand here, and so she seemed very genuine and caring. Mm-hmm. So that kind of very passionate.
Yeah.
Almost scary. She almost scared me too. Right. So, but there was all these weird emotions that came with it. So then I just became a regular attendee. Like I just instantly just started going when I could, and it gave me something to do on Sundays.
Yeah. Did you take their membership course?
Yep, I did.
Yeah. And what was that like?
You had to, in order to be like, to get involved in any ministry. It was to be honest, I don't really remember it. For me, I think there's a lot of things I still block out.
Yeah.
From my experience that I haven't really thought much about that place since I left.
Yeah.
Almost 5 years ago now, I think. So,
okay.
Just there. Yeah.
So you said in order for people to get involved in ministries, you had to take the membership course. So Does that mean if you wanted to join like a Bible study, even if you weren't leading it, would you have to take the membership course?
A Bible study, no, but they didn't really do Bible studies back then. Like they did more what was called cell groups.
Okay. So if you were to do one of those groups, you wouldn't have to take the membership course. It was
No.
if you were leading it or something.
If you were leading something, anything to do with like
Okay.
kind of being in the spotlight, like if you're an usher for the front door handing out greeting cards or they're
Okay.
tying envelopes and things like that, you had to take the membership course.
Okay. Okay. So it seems like it was positive for the most part in the beginning. When did it start to go downhill then?
There, it's not like there was a specific moment that it was like, okay, this is the deciding factor that things were going downhill. I think when you get involved in, well, I'll speak from experience. When I got involved in this church, it's slowly, it becomes normal to you, right? It becomes normal, like when he's telling you, preaching from the pulpit, that gays is like it's a sin and they're going to hell. Like that's all I ever heard, and
Hmm.
that's what I knew, and I actually believed it and I agreed with it at the time, and because I heard it so much. I don't I'm definitely a person who cares about people. Like it doesn't matter what your lifestyle is. I don't care what color you are.
Yeah.
I've never been that type of person, and I found myself um starting to feel like, this is really sad for me to admit, like starting to feel better than people, like almost like a
That makes
self-righteous,
sense. No, that's a type of characteristic of these types of groups.
Yeah, and because
Absolutely.
I honestly got very involved very fast, and because I think when you go into a church like that, over the years I'd watch and I'd see people who came in passionately, and I came in passionately.
Hmm.
I'm not going to name people.
Hmm.
I seen a lot of people that I knew that were passionate, and they would come in and they would be targeted because they were passionate. They were like, it's almost like you're going to go out and you're going to get us more
Yep.
people drawn in because we're passionate. We're the ones who pull the people in.
Yep. It seems
Because,
like they really like to go for, and I'm not saying in a malicious way, I'm just saying this is what I've noticed talking with so many different people who have left this organization. They either go for the vulnerable or they go for the people like you.
so I was vulnerable too, though.
You
And
were.
I was literally like the whole caboodle for them because of my past,
Yeah.
because I struggled with myself. I had anger issues. And don't get me wrong, I still get angry because I'm
Oh,
very
yeah.
passionate. I'm very passionate with my emotions. And, you know, um, so I, Francis took me in as his daughter.
Really?
Yes. To this day, even my ex-husband will remind me, he loved you like his own. And that was the part that was made it so difficult for me to leave, because
Yeah.
I'm not a vindictive person. I'm not malicious in any way. I would never intentionally hurt somebody, but I needed to remove myself from that situation. And I knew it would hurt him, but that was never my intention. I just didn't see the way they saw anymore. And I don't even know what started changing that. It could have
Yeah.
been, you know what I think it really was? It was when my oldest son was playing hockey,
Hmm.
and he was in competitive hockey, and we traveled, and Francis would send me messages. Oh, haven't seen you at church. And I was a leader. Like I was actually the armor bearer for Edith.
Can you explain what an armor bearer is for the audience?
So it's a really, okay. So it's in the Bible in the Old Testament. Honestly, it's like you're protecting them. You're protecting
From
them because
what?
the enemies, because they have a call of God on them. You are going to intercede for them by praying for them, and you're going to protect them, that if somebody tries to hurt them, that you're going to lay your life down.
Did any of
Like,
the doctors or nurses, sorry to interrupt,
that's
have
okay.
armor bearers?
Do
Did any
no,
of the police officers in the organization?
no,
No. But
no.
what do they do besides preaching and start this organization? Like
What do you mean?
Francis and Edith. What do they do other than that?
Oh,
Sorry.
exactly. No, exactly. And that's the thing, though, because Francis has always followed Rod Parsley's church and literally wanted to be like a seed of him. Like that's
Rod Parsley is a
he's a super
Um,
church
yeah,
in,
he's
I
like a
can't
mega
remember.
church, but he's
Yeah.
also like up there with the types of people like Kenneth Copeland, is he not? Isn't he a
I
prosperity
don't,
gospel?
honestly, I didn't get involved in that. Like
Yeah.
I found he talked about Rod Parsley so much. I was like, he's another person. Like
Yeah.
I'm just like, even when I went to concerts, people like, you go to concerts and New Kids on the Block was my thing growing up. Right.
Yeah.
And I went to the concert and that was the only concert I went to. And first of all, yeah, they have a great talent and gift, but I don't worship people. Like
Yeah.
some people just worship people. And I found a lot of people worship Francis and Edith too.
Mhm. Facebook page.
And you know what? They'll protect them at all costs because even this conversation, I'm sure, you know.
And that's another symptom
Yeah.
of a high control group. It's
Yeah.
unfortunate.
It
And
is.
you can't reason with some of these people, even if you want to reach out to them and try and help them and just plant seeds. They're just going to stand up on stage like this weekend and completely diminish everything that's going on and everything that you pointed out. And
Everything that happens. So I was pondering when, we've been talking a lot, and I was just laying down in bed the other night and I was thinking about, I try to bring myself back to those moments. When I do watch those services, they still get me. They stir up a frustration and anger inside me because I remember how I felt being in those services, even
how,
though nobody would have ever known.
how did you feel?
I felt always beat up. I always felt I wasn't good enough, and every time I went home, I felt drained from those services.
Really? So when you see those now, is that it brings up those kinds of emotions?
Absolutely.
Okay. Wow. So back to the armor bearer thing. You were her armor bearer, and you had
Yeah.
mentioned that kind of, what did that do? Did that start opening the gates of questioning?
Yes, I was a leader. I was a leader in a lot of things. Like I was very involved. So like I wasn't just the armor. I got to the armor bearer like late years down the road, and
Okay.
there are some situations that happen along the road that I'm not going to get into over this with a family member, and a lot of division that happened with personal family, and that went there and then decided to leave, and I was still there.
Yeah.
But it was like their way of drawing you in. I feel like it's funny because I've had conversations with other people. When they knew you were struggling, it was like they pulled you in and put you in a leadership position so that you would have you. It almost like, I can't put words what their reasoning was, but this is how I felt. That it was like you're being babysat, or that they're drawing you in more so because maybe they had a feeling you were slowly putting one foot out the door.
Not wrong. Yep.
I got called. I got asked to be an armor bearer. I was also involved in the children's ministry. Like, there was a time in my life. I was there for how many years? 17 years. I was there. I started when I was 19, and I literally started exiting around 35 years old. So a big chunk of my life I was there.
Yeah.
So I was involved in a lot of different things. I remember being a deacon. And I had just had my third baby, and they had some other leaders come over to our place and ask us to be deacons. And I'm like, what's a deacon? And I read in the Bible. I'm like, that doesn't sound like something we should be doing. Like, it doesn't sound like our lifestyle right now.
What is a
And
deacon?
I don't even know, honestly. Like, to them, it's like you're like the head of like different departments, so that it's almost like a chain, like you have the head, which is the pastor or whatever he is, apostle. I don't even know what an apostle is.
Self-appointed, no education. So
Yeah. So then it goes down a chain, and you are not to talk to that apostle without going through your chain of command almost.
that's
It's
not
almost like military.
normal.
No, I know.
That's a
So,
business point of
yeah,
view, in my opinion.
yeah, absolutely. So anyways, because I did have Francis's ear. I could override. I could go and message him through I had the privilege, I guess, of saying, and I don't take that for granted. I don't, but he's a person. And that's what would frustrate me. I'm like, we'd be at these meetings and deacons meetings with other people. And I remember there was some sort of book they were trying to put in order. I don't even remember what kind of book it was. It was like a instruction manual almost. And somebody came up with the idea, and then all of a sudden they wanted to get me and all these other people to do it. And I'm like, no, I already have a busy life as is. I have my kids. Church is already drawing away enough attention from them, and it's like my life. And I was just getting frustrated. And I was like, and then they're like, well, you can tell him then. And I was like, I will gladly tell him. So I literally messaged him, and then he called me and we had a conversation. He's like, well, I'm glad you told me this, because if nobody speaks up, then I can't fix the problem. And I did agree. Like, I do think he's got some good attributes as a leader.
Oh, he does. Yeah.
You know, but then there's the other side. So,
yeah.
And he would hear me, and then nothing came of it. And people are like scared to say things even. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to be disrespectful, but I'm going to tell you, I'm not okay with it. I'm not going to do this.
Yeah.
So
good for you.
Yeah. And he was good about it. I wasn't rude. Like I said, I was just like, no, you know, this is everyone's afraid. And then I remember it's like, you went to Francis without, you know, so-and-so could have went. And I'm like, nobody wanted to do it. So it doesn't matter. I went through above the chain of command, so to speak. And it becomes about stressing him out. He's got enough on his plate. Well, so do we.
Yeah. So how many hours do you think you'd spend per week there? Or how many days?
Too many. Okay, Sundays were a write-off. Sunday was literally get up, get ready, get my kids ready, rush out the door, get to church for 10 o'clock or 10:30, whatever it was, be there till 12:30, rush home, make lunch, get the kids down for a nap, wake them up. Oh, if they were sleeping, you woke them up. You had to be at that night service, 6 p.m. Early dinners on Sunday, rush, and then 9:30 services, 10 o'clock. It depends on how the Spirit of God was moving that day.
So your life is according to their schedule, essentially.
Absolutely. And then it didn't matter if you worked Monday morning at 6. Like if I worked right now, what I do, like for my new career, I'd have to, I get up by like 5:30. There's no way I'd want to be at church till 10 o'clock at night. No. And you would feel guilty if you weren't there. You'd be like, how dare you miss? Well, you missed. Oh, well, they missed it on the move of God. Well, it's the same move of God every Sunday.
So how did you figure out people were saying these things though? Because is that what contributed to your shame and guilt?
It's what he would say from the pulpit.
Oh, but he live streams everything. So can you not just watch from home?
No, he didn't live stream then. They have videos. They have videos from back in the old day before live streaming was even available. They have they're not going to get rid of that stuff because that's what they hold on to. They have books. They have all the prophecies written up in a binder. Like, I don't have evidence of this because it's in their congregation.
Yeah.
I've seen it, but I've never,
again, you don't have physical evidence, but
no, I don't, but I've seen it with my own eyes.
Interesting. So that was
it would be simple things like, I remember reading The Shack. And I love that book. I cried. I just, it felt so real reading it. And it just, that book really helped open a lot of it opened up my tunnel vision is the way I'll call it. And then I remember bringing it up in the little women's group that he had, the little morning. Oh yeah. In the morning.
Can you go into this?
Yeah. In the morning time.
What day?
It would be Sunday before service. Okay. I think an hour before service, the elite, I will call it, got invited, and it was all women, all young girls.
Between like what ages?
In their 20s to my age, which at the time I would have been 30.
Okay.
Not even 30, actually, I don't think. Anyways, we got invited to, it was all women, and it was most of the Esther girls. They would be there, and we had Bible studies. And I remember talking about the Shack there, and Edith had even read the Shack.
Yeah.
And we got reprimanded in that about even considering that you'd entertain the thought of God being a woman or this or that. I was like, that wasn't what I got away from the book.
Yeah. That's not the gist of that.
It wasn't the message. The message was love.
Yeah.
And that's what I got from it. Not that, oh, God could be a girl. I don't care about that stuff.
Yeah.
I care about love and how you make somebody feel and how I perceive God to be.
Yeah.
And, got reprimanded. And I felt like I'm not sharing anything anymore because I don't want to feel like crap. I don't want to feel shame about myself for
just reading something.
Book. Yeah.
And having a different opinion. That's information control.
Exactly.
That's information control.
Yeah.
And having your own thoughts and opinions, that's another way of controlling you. So
yeah, exactly. And anytime you ever had an idea or thought, it was like, yeah, it not all the time. Like it depends on the situation, I guess, right? But there's so many, like I have so much, and the more and more I open myself up to it, the more stuff that I'm reminded of that it wasn't an aha moment. I don't know when my aha moment was, other than when my ex came to me, when I stopped going. I was like, I can't go there anymore.
yeah,
I just can't. And then they got a hold of him, and he was not, I was the involved one. And it was when they got a hold of him, and then all of a sudden I got confronted that I had a Jezebel spirit, or I was operating in a Jezebel spirit.
Can you explain to the audience what that means?
Well, in my words, it wouldn't be so nice, but if you look up the characteristics of Jezebel on Google, I mean, is one evil woman. She's a very evil, destructive woman against God's people. And that's what I was being accused of.
Did they have a different word for this when men started questioning and not attending?
I don't really know, to be honest, because I don't think I ever paid attention to that.
Because that's an interesting thing, because I've heard of several people being called that.
Now, my ex would say that the men, so there's this thing, like women have the Jezebel spirit, which is not true. It's not actually, if you do your study, because I studied this out after, if you study it out, Jezebel is, according to the Bible, is a spirit. Mm-hmm. They think it's always it's a female. It could be male too. So it doesn't have a gender specific, I'm going to pick just females.
Do you feel like the church was somewhat misogynistic?
I don't know. So when you use that word, I'm not really sure what that means, to be honest.
Like women were more controlled. Men had an upper hand. Because I've been told by some people that men were seen as the leaders and we had to submit as women.
No, I don't. I think I think, again, it'll go back to the beginning of what I said earlier when we talked about it being drawn in by passionate people. I think it depends on how passionate you are, what's going to make you a leader.
Okay.
Are you going to draw more people in and keep people excited? Okay. So I don't think that they're necessarily, men are yes, they go by the Bible, which in their minds, the man is the head of the home. So they're gonna water down, meaning the man makes the final decision and the woman is to submit to his final decision, whether she agrees with it or not.
Which, like, by secular terms is technically misogynistic, but there's an argument to be made in religious standpoints. I still don't like it. I still don't subscribe to it, but you can also say that's just their faith. I don't like that argument, but yeah. So that's technically kind of misogynistic, but you didn't necessarily feel like you were less than when you were there.
No, not until when I left the church, and then I felt like it was becoming that. It was becoming that your wife needs to submit to you. You lead. You don't leave this church. And they made sure he didn't leave that church by making him feel like he was important, like they did to me. They did not give him bat an eye at him when we were married. Not once. Nope.
But when you started questioning,
more passive, he's passive aggressive. Mm-hmm. He's more like calm. Yeah. Nothing bothers him. Like, whereas me, I'm like, I don't like that, and I'm more outspoken and I'm not afraid. I shouldn't say I'm not afraid. I have moments of not being afraid of when to speak my opinion. Mm-hmm. And when I get pushed too far. Yeah. And I got pushed too far. And I remember I went a couple times even just to try to work through, because it was really hard to leave there too at the same time. Yeah. Because my kids had grown up there. Like, I brought my kids there, but even my kids were struggling there. How so? My oldest son would say he just didn't, he was starting to feel not good enough. Like, I remember he was 9 and he said something in the car and I was just like, I'm not okay with this. Yeah. I'm not okay with what a 9-year-old saying he doesn't feel good enough for God. I'm sorry. That is was so gut wrenching to me. And I'm like, that's not how I want to raise my kids.
It's a very toxic thing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Not feeling good enough. I know that feeling. You never want people to feel not good enough. And I think Francis preaches a lot with frustration, anger, because he's trying to control with an iron fist.
Yep.
And God, in my eyes, doesn't do that. I know there's times you take the hammer down on your kids, don't get me wrong. But I always treat, you know what? I treat my relationship with my kids. My kids do bad things. There's consequences for their decisions. But at the end of the day, they always know they're loved and they always know they can come home, or that even when I'm mad, and it might be a few days until I cool off and can actually talk about it, that they know that I'm always here and I'm always going to have their back and I'm always going to protect them.
But when they have an independent thought, they're not reprimanded for it.
No, I actually appreciate it. I love hearing their point of view and what they think. Mom, you're wrong in that. Okay, tell me why. Let's talk about this. Okay, maybe I am wrong. It's not always about being right or wrong. It's about opening and seeing other perspectives and not having tunnel vision.
And you don't feel like that's something that you had when you were there?
Oh, I had tunnel vision for sure. Oh gosh, yeah. Yeah. I didn't. I think like I always struggled on the inside. I'm such a sensitive person. Mm-hmm. Like I said, my emotions are definitely, and I think that was something too that made me feel a lot of shame is when you learned, they did this teaching on your mind, will, and your emotions, spirit, soul, body. Like they broke it down into 3 parts and it's this big, long teaching. And it's almost like your emotions are a bad thing, you know, and I get it. Emotions can be a bad thing if you allow them to go too far and you don't have a balance.
Yeah.
You know, but it's learning to have that balance, but you shouldn't feel, sorry, I think my phone's beeping. I should probably turn off my volume. You shouldn't feel bad for having an emotion like sadness or anger or frustration. There's nothing wrong with that.
Nicole expressed that in her video to me, that she felt like she couldn't. And she was another one of the, I don't know, you weren't actually in the Esther Girls, were you?
Oh gosh, no. I was already married and had kids, and I'm sure I would have been one they started it years ago, because I call them delinquents. Like I don't say that in a disrespectful way. I say to those Esther girls that they're just like me. They're lost. They're looking for love. And sometimes we look for love in the wrong places, whether that's having sex, whether that's going to the wrong man. It doesn't matter. When you're looking for love, you'll settle for what you think is love. And these Esther girls just wanted to be loved, wanted to be accepted, wanted to feel a part of something bigger other than themselves, you know? And so it broke my heart, because it became more of I think it was more toxic, because you want to teach your kids to you want to teach them that it's like birds, right? Eventually they're going to learn to fly on their own. That's what your job is as a parent, is to prepare them. And I felt like this Esther house wasn't preparing them for anything other than to rely on him and her, meaning Francis and Edith.
That's what it sounds like.
You know, and that's all it's done. And their whole purpose in life is to serve these people.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I serve them.
Yeah.
For them to turn on me the way they did was gut wrenching, but it showed their true character. And at the end of the day, I'm a better person because of it. And I'm stronger and I'm not vulnerable in a lot of areas.
What kind of areas did you feel vulnerable in while you were there? Like, now looking back, what do you think made you more vulnerable back then?
If I was to say something about being vulnerable, it would have been more that I couldn't think for myself. I couldn't speak for myself. Even though I could sometimes, it was like I was always scared to speak because could be the wrong answer almost. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yep. That makes sense. Wow.
I just wanted to be accepted. I wanted to say the right thing, do the right thing, be the right person. But I felt like I was lost every single day of my life.
Yeah.
I was like, who is Melanie?
Yeah.
everyone's telling me who I am, but who do I know to be? Like who I should know. I should know myself more than anybody.
Yeah.
And I didn't know who I was. I was lost.
Yeah. There was, what you're saying essentially is that there was a combination of things that led to you finally leaving.
Yeah. Too many things didn't add up.
Yeah.
I started getting frustrated when I started actually paying attention to what he was preaching from the pulpit. And I actually start looking it up. Like, I remember this one time, he's like, the most, what was it? The most, not aggressive. It was about an animal. It was like the wild ox. It's the most dangerous and deadly. It was like a wild ox in Africa. I was like, actually, no, it's hippos. Like, you actually didn't do your research, and and everyone's like, amen, amen. And I'm like, and I would look at my ex, because I was like, he's not even telling the truth. Like, look, it's right here on that phone on Google.
Yeah.
And it was like, he's saying things, and everyone just took him at his word, and nobody studied out for themselves what he was saying to be true. And it didn't feel true in my heart.
Yeah.
Half the stuff.
Did,
how he was preaching.
If people did, like when you read the Shack, for example, were they reprimanded for being like, hey, just so you know, that's not actually true?
I don't know, because I just know it was me that read the Shack, and I know when you opened my big mouth in the little girls meeting, in the woman meeting, that it wasn't a woman meeting, it was like a young adults meeting, and I was the one like feeling like reprimanded because I read that book. I can't speak for anybody else on that because I don't know.
Okay. Was there anything else substantial that you can remember that really had an impact?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember meeting with Francis for a 3-hour meeting and another leader. And I wasn't allowed to have anybody else with me for accountability. But it was 2 against 1, and which is wrong. When I look back, I'm like, I would never have done that had I known.
So you went into a meeting and he had someone there for accountability?
Yeah. Probably to more make his case to come against me.
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah. And I recorded the whole conversation. And then I felt wrong. And then I went back and I told my ex, and I was like, you don't believe me? Listen to this. And he would not listen to it. And he would not listen to it. And you know what? There was a time where I turned it off. Mm-hmm. There was a time I turned it off because I knew technically, like, I would never, you're supposed to let people know when you're recording, or I felt wrong. So
you don't have to in Ontario.
Oh, I didn't know that.
You only need one. You only need, yeah, I know. You only need, for everyone listening, you only need one party consent, and that includes yourself.
So if I go and I say, I give myself permission to record this conversation.
Yeah, but they don't know. That's totally legal, from what I understand.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'll have to look into that for sure. Not that I'm going to be doing that, but I mean, had I known, I wouldn't have felt so guilty about it and then delete it. Like, I had it on my old iPhone anyways, but he started sharing some personal stuff. So I stopped I actually went into my phone and stopped recording it because I felt really bad. Like, I'm not going to share personal things on his own personal family, you know? And I think we had a 3-hour conversation. It was the worst conversation of my life. And it made me more confident that I remember what he said to me, one specific thing he said to me, you are not serving the God I'm serving. And I'm like, and I said, and I completely agree with you. I don't serve the God you serve, because the God I serve loves, and he forgives, and he understands, and he has grace. And it was like, he got so aggressive in that meeting. He was so angry with me, and he's like, you're not hearing me. And I'm like, yeah, I'm hearing you loud and clear.
Good for you.
And that was the end of it. And I knew. Yeah. I knew that I had to leave that place. And then it was really hard for me because there's so many people there that have good hearts, and genuinely there's good people there, you know, and they're just following the wrong person. They're being brainwashed. Yep. I was brainwashed.
There's a certain level of thought reformation that I've picked up on from speaking with people who have left, and it's totally right. When you can't speak for yourself, you feel like you can't. And, you know, when he stands from the pulpit, and I used the word the other day on Twitter as he berates people when they don't amen when he wants them to.
Yeah,
And
even somebody that was listening to a little service with me was like, "Oh, his go-to is Amen." This is the mic isn't like he's got. It's like he's comfortable and he's tunnel visioned. His way is the only way.
Yep.
And he'll say that God's word is the only way. No, your way of the way you see God is the only way, and it's wrong.
Yep.
And you need you can't. I don't think you should. I don't even know what to say because it overwhelms me with how he thinks.
Yeah.
And how he can't even admit to being wrong. I was like, I don't even want an armor bearer. She is. Mm-hmm. It was so hard for me because having somebody park in her parking spot was the end of the world. And I literally witnessed her having a hissy fit over she's told the other leader, get that person, find out who that person is and get them out of my parking spot. I'm like, oh my God, are you joking?
That's not a woman of God. I'm sorry, that's not. Do you think the Pope would have a hissy fit? I mean, the Pope would already have like people standing for him so that it was his parking spot. But if my pastor doesn't have a parking spot at his church.
They have worked so hard to get where they are today and they don't want to lose it all. And I think even watching him break down when the newspaper exposed the truth about that church and how he preaches, all I could say, it broke my heart to see him that way. But I thought, no, you're more sad that you could lose everything.
And I can tell you right now, if anyone's listening, which like I'm sure there are people listening, but like to the audience, there are more articles coming out. This is not stopping. There are more people coming forward. And again, I don't want to speak to them because I know they're not going to listen. But all you need to do is change. People are leaving with serious PTSD, anxiety, and depression. That is documented. Like, what did you say to me over the summer? You said something about you thought you were going to get struck by lightning. That's not normal.
God. I was not allowed. Like, I remember when I first left, it wasn't even just lightning. It's just, so that's actually a good point. I'm glad you brought that up because when I was going through my separation, I met with my lawyer, my first lawyer that I had hired. And I couldn't even talk about, I couldn't talk about that church. I couldn't talk about anything. I was so scared. I even thought my thoughts were going to get me in trouble because I was so scared. And I didn't want to talk about anything to do with that church because I felt like I was going to get in a car accident. Whatever bad happened to me is because I deserved it.
What?
And not because I felt I deserved it, but because I'm sure there's something that they would be like, oh, because you're out of God's will. When you're out of God's will and you didn't ask God to do something, then you shouldn't have did it. And that's why something bad happened to you.
Is that what they teach people?
They do. They absolutely do.
Wow.
I remember this one time, it probably was on live stream. I mean, he knows when to cut live stream when he's going to say something.
Oh yeah, he's been doing it a lot.
Turn the cameras off. Turn the cameras off. Well,
that's also not normal.
That's kind of a sign right there, people.
Yeah.
That you should, if you have to turn the cameras off, then you shouldn't be saying it. That's
simple. There's so many things I've been told that the CRA could revoke their tax exemption immediately because they turn the cameras off. That's not going to happen.
Oh yeah, and that's another thing. If I remember asking where my tithing was going. Tithing $14,000 a year, 10%, easily 10%. You had to do 10%, and then above and beyond. And not to mention that they get easily a $10,000 bonus at the end of the year before Christmas that they take up, which is called a love offering, so that it can go straight into their pockets and they don't claim it.
Not fair. Religions, and I'm still very Christian now. I'm having trouble with my faith because of this situation, but I can tell you right now, no religion, I don't care what it is, should be allowed to operate that way. If businesses and schools and universities can't operate that way,
I agree.
They shouldn't get a free pass either. When people are leaving with serious psychological damage, you're done. You shouldn't be allowed to use the religious freedom card anymore. And the government needs to start legislating things to be able to identify when undue influence is going on. Usually it's used with doctors and nurses and stuff when they start asking people in hospice for money, from what I understand. This is another thing Stephen Hassan talks about. But it should start being looked at as a way to help people leaving groups like this. because your mind was not your own. I could give you a million studies and books and articles and lectures and podcasts that tells me and could tell you and all these other people that your mind was not your own and you were giving up your money undue influence. And
well, you know what? I believe in giving, not necessarily the church the way we were, but I do believe in giving. I do believe, though, if I'm giving, I have the right to ask where it's going and to have an answer and proof of where it's going. And yeah, it's like, that's none of your business. That's what I got. That's none of your business.
That's, again, something that the CRA, somebody send this to the CRA already. Like, I'm tired of having this.
I'm trying to stay as neutral as possible. I wanted to leave there and not even give that place a second thought.
Yeah. But
I didn't think this would happen. Like, I never thought, like, I broke down and cried the day that church got exposed because
people are getting
because of
so harmed.
What they've been doing to people's lives has been, I always say they got a lot of blood on their hands. They really do. And I hope they hear this and hear me saying that, because you owe people an apology. You need to, like, honestly, there's so much pride you have and you can't even see it because you're so blinded by it. Mm-hmm. And you have a lot of blood on your hands and you will be accountable one day for it. I don't know how it's going to be. And this isn't a threat.
No, it's not.
It's just a matter of what you sow, you reap. I don't care how, like, it's going to come. It's going to show up on your doorstep.
Yep.
And more people, if they have to leave, then it's scary because you're a family. Like it's like a family. And I never thought I'd have the courage to share my story. And I don't know what it's going to look like sharing my story. But I'm okay with that because I'm a strong person now. And I think for myself and I stick up for myself. And I don't bend over. I don't worship people. And I don't look for affirmation in the wrong places. Like, even my fiance is like, he saw me go through it. He helped me through the darkest time of my life. I didn't want my marriage to be over.
Yeah.
I fought for my marriage. I went to 3 different counselors. It was only to be ordained by where Francis wanted us to go, or the other leader. I don't know if I'm allowed to say his name.
Yeah, that's okay.
And so, no, every time we went to the counselor, they saw how my ex was and how he treated me. And the one counselor even spoke against Third Day. And then then it was witchcraft. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, can we not, like, honestly think about this? Like, so I fought for my marriage.
Yeah.
And now it's been blown out of proportion into some story that he makes it to be because of his religious views. And I met my fiance, I think 4 months after I was actually physically moved out of the house from my ex. And he's helped me realize that I can think for myself. Have an opinion, say what you think, and it was scary for me even going through it. Like, I remember there was a time where I bumped into somebody at the mall, and this girl I used to do the, what is it? At Third Day Worship Center when we were there, she was part of the children's group, and I was like a teacher there, and I always was fine with the kids, and they always loved me. And their family had left, and I went to a store, and she's like, didn't you used to go to Third Day? And I shut right down. I was like, I don't even want to talk about that place. I was so angry. And I walked right, and that, like, my poor fiance was like, oh my gosh, like, is she gonna, because he knew how I felt about the place. He was like so worried.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I'm not mad at her. And then she told me who she was. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're grown up. And she's like, I don't like it there. And so once you know you're safe, you can talk about it, right? But if it's an actual Third Day person, no, you're not going to get much conversation with them on that. So,
well, they've been trained to thought stop.
Yeah.
That's part of the thought reformation. And
they all preach the same too.
Because their brain is not their own. And that should be a violation. You didn't consent. You didn't know going into it that this was going to happen to you. That's not consenting to something. Therefore, something happened to you that you did not consent to. And it's not fair. And we know this through, I'm going to get scientific sort of, like, we know this through psychologists, through therapists, through survivors, through experiments, through studies, that this is something that can easily happen. It happened in communist China. Robert J. Lifton was the first one to outline thought reformation and the steps. And third day has the steps. It has
Yeah.
the steps. And it's not just through your conversations that people are having with me. It's through the diagnosis of people. It's through the text messages I see that they used to send to people. It's there. You can
Yeah.
see it, or through journals. Ben's journal was a way of seeing what happened to his mind while he was there.
Yeah.
Same thing with Nicole,
Wow.
same thing with Ashley. It's so evident.
I burned everything. I wanted that part of my life erased.
Yeah.
Because I was so ashamed of myself. Like I wouldn't have brought my kids to that church, and there's a lot of shame and embarrassment, right? From
Yeah.
the thought. And I even am embarrassed by how I treated my own family, and
Yeah. But again, like I try to reiterate, it's not their fault. It's not your fault. Your mind wasn't your own. It wasn't your own while you were there.
And I understand that, but I also do take accountability for me going there. I still chose to go there. I still woke up every morning and chose to do what I did. And yes, there's brainwashing that happens, but it's, you know what, I think I could be wrong in this. There's always that inner voice, that conviction that you have in your own personal life. And the more and more we ignore it, the more and more it kind of drowns out and we second guess ourselves.
No, that's
I always had
right.
that. Mm-hmm. I always had that conviction of what you're doing is wrong. And I would always get revelations along the way, but I could never but then I would be checked right back into the third day thinking, nope, that's the enemy or whatever it was. Right.
I hate that line. The enemy, it's the devil. It's the truth.
No, it's also life.
Yeah, like no.
Let's be realistic here. It's life. Life happens. I could get into the car and get in a car accident and die like anybody else. Yeah. However, that doesn't mean that I was out of the will of God or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you one thing, it depends on where you are. Mm-hmm. If you're in God's will and going to Third Day Worship Center and you get in a car accident, well, that was the devil attacking you. But if I walk away from that church and get in a car accident the next day, it's because I was out of God's will. It's messed up, back and forth. It's all about what they want it to be.
And that's not healthy.
No.
And that's complete manipulation of scripture.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, it says a lot when churches come forward and denounce these kinds of beliefs. And that's what happened in a lot of churches in Kingston.
Yeah.
It says a lot. But that's still not enough, because when your brain's in it, it's in it. And it's very hard to leave. It's very hard. And it's traumatic to leave. So, like, even just talking about it years later, I'm going to bring this up again, but like, it's amazing to me how scared you were to talk to me on the phone. I get, like, I was a complete stranger.
No, it wasn't that. It was like, what are they up to now? Are they trying to trap me in something? Like, that's where I went.
Not normal.
Even my fiance was like, be careful, just be cautious, because he knows, he sees, he's walked me through a lot of stuff. We've been together for almost 4 years now. So he's walked through the main part of me walking away from that church. I mean, I was already gone from the church a year prior to that, or so, like in and out. Mm-hmm. 2 years, I mean, but I think he's seen a lot of things change in me too, over even my mindsets, right? Like I was scared or like angry, like talk about that place, I'd be like, ah.
Yeah, you've come so far.
Yeah. I think the more and more you talk about it, the more and more strength you get to, and you realize it's out there, and it's like, okay, this is how I thought, and I don't think that way anymore. Now, I definitely have a lot of trust issues.
Oh yeah.
But that's stuff I have to work through, and I know I'll work through. I haven't definitely not arrived in that area, but I was definitely scared to talk to you in the summertime.
Yeah. Like I could hear it in your voice. Mm-hmm. But you have a amazing support system, like your fiance, mm-hmm. and like your work. Even you said they were super supportive, and they know.
Well, they heard all the stories, and then when it got exposed, it's quite funny.
Yeah.
They're like, oh my gosh, you got to do this. I'm like, oh, I don't know. But, because I never want, I guess for me, regardless of if there was ever an apology or not, I've already forgiven Edith and Francis for sure. I know that they would believe otherwise, but that's okay. That's their choice. And they have their version of what they think happens. And I guess I have mine, but I know from experience, it's not a healthy place.
Mm-mm.
You know, I'm sad that my boys are somewhat still connected there. I tried to get away from that place, and I feel like it's just, I can't get away from them, you know,
Yeah.
like your worst nightmare. So,
Thank you so much for coming forward.
well, thank you for going after the story, because honestly, this is something that I honestly didn't think would ever happen.
I didn't think so either. There was a moment back in like August where I was like, Kate, shut it down. Can't do it. And like freaked out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I was like, no, this is the right thing to do. These
Yeah.
people shouldn't be afraid to speak about what happened and warn other people,
Yeah.
especially when they're spewing conspiracy theories about COVID. So thanks again so much for coming forward. And again, I'm going to reiterate, don't harass or attack any members, leaders, people affiliated with this church. That's not what we're trying to do. So with that, please share Melanie's story, and we'll see you next week for another Third Day Thursday. Bye.